Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. All right, hey, welcome to Hell Has an Exit. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. On this show, we interview a lot of different types of people. We do a lot of recovering addicts, mental health. We just did a show with Max Bemis from Say Anything. So any of you punk rock fans are into Say Anything, you can go back and listen to the last episode of Hell Has an Exit. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you could find a podcast, we are listed there. If you could tell a friend to tell a friend, if you want to help the show out, the more people we get listening to the show, the bigger we get, the easier it is for me to do my job. When we are on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe and, tell your friends and family about the show. With no further ado, I got my buddy Ryan D here.
All right, man.
What's up, bro? How's it going?
It's going good, man. Glad to be on here. I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm
Are you nervous?
not nervous, but definitely awkward. I'm not used to speaking into microphones. I've never really liked microphones. I do I'm in a program that we speak often, and anytime we're in a place that there's a microphone, I try to shy away.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you asked me to do this, and I was slowly catching a resentment because everybody I know has been on the show other than myself. So.
I was like, I don't know, Ryan, because I was thinking, because I have a list of people I want to ask, and you've been on the list. You're a great speaker. You're from Florida. I do a lot of native Florida people. And I was like, man, because I've asked a lot of people and they're like, nah, bro, I don't want to be on, they don't want their whole story on the internet or something, on YouTube or something. And when I asked you today, I was like, I'm pretty sure Ryan won't do it. And you were like, yeah, bro, whatever.
Yeah, I had nothing else to do, really. Tonight I don't do much on Friday night. So I was happy to do it. I've kind of thought about putting my whole story out there, out here in the mass, because I'm usually in the safeguard of a room and a fellowship and stuff when I share my experience. And the things that have happened and, the people that are a part of it, because part of my story is definitely, family members and things and that. And I'm sure, some of them are going to listen to it and stuff like that. And but it's not like, people don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty open with everybody,
Yeah, I think my dad had a hard time listening to when I shared my story, just because the childhood I had and the childhood he had is not the same. You can have the same experience viewed in a different way.
Yeah.
So sometimes people don't remember it the way you remember it.
It's funny you mention that, because I have, siblings that I grew up with. My parents, my mother and my father had split when I was probably 3, at a really young age. My perception of the relationship between me and my mother, my siblings, or my brother's perception is two completely different things. Whereas I'll say this is how I felt like things were going on in the household. My older brothers would be like, that's the farthest from the truth. That's not how it was. And then I also need to look at the dynamics between, my relationship with my mother and my brother, my two different brothers' relationships with my mother and stuff like that. They had my father in the household for a lot longer than I did. And by the time my mother and my father had split, and then with my two older brothers, it just was a different, my relationship with my mother is different than my brother Brandon's relationship with my mother.
Yeah.
And then my brother Ray's relationship are different as well. So
and the different childhood,
Yeah. Like you said, I was born here in Broward County, down here in South Florida. My two older brothers, they grew up out in Dania with my father, back and forth from work and home and things like that. And then once they had, my parents had split, my mother, within a couple of years had met somebody else. And I was too young to realize this rift that was going between my two older brothers and this new father figure stepping in. This was just some guy that I, said, hey, what's up, little man? And I was like, all right, cool, And then we ended up moving from Dania to Cooper City. they seen the difference. You know what I mean? We didn't have much when my dad was coming. You know, my dad was around, and my mother was, you know, a single mother. You know, we didn't have a lot out there. And then when we moved to Cooper City, you know, my mother's or boyfriend at the time, he was more successful. You know, he had a lot of money, not a ton of money, but he was able to afford the nice things in life. You know, the nice house, a decent car, you know, stuff like that. Put nice clothes on our backs and stuff like that. You know, I remember moving into Cooper City and seeing, you know, these other kids. Like Cooper City is is fairly, respectable neighborhood, good schools. And, I was the kid running around with, with holes in the shorts, not necessarily broke, but I didn't have, these nice,
like Fat Farm, Sean John,
all that stuff,
Echo, yeah.
And
how old are you?
33.
All right, so we're about the same age.
Yeah. So I was supposed to be graduating class of 06.
Okay.
And real quickly, I realized that these kids got more money than me, or their parents were able to get them things that I just wasn't able to get, and then I seen the difference. And like my brother, my older brothers, like eventually started getting in trouble very quickly. My oldest brother, Ray, and both of them are my idols. Like anything and everything they did, I tried to emulate. Any of their friends in the neighborhoods, I tried to emulate everything they did. If they were into rock, I was into rock. Once they were into rap, I was into rap. Once they wore, this type of clothing, I wanted to wear that type of clothing. And
did you go to the skate park a lot out there?
I did. I went to Brian Piccolo, and I don't know if you remember SFX.
Of course, dude. SFX and Brian Piccolo, dude. I remember the Janko jeans, and Solomon's. I think Solomon inline skates.
The inline skates. Yeah, I had a pair of like beige ones, man, and I thought I had made it. You know what I mean?
The best thing ever.
Those things were great. And then it was
SFX
K2.
was so cool. K2 fatties.
Yeah.
The Razors. The Razors were like I couldn't afford those. Like I remember they were like just came out.
Yeah, I don't remember what the Razors were, but I remember.
Oh, the Razors are original.
Yeah, like I remember begging my mom for K2 fatties or whatever, for Christmas.
Did you have soaps?
I had soaps.
Yeah,
I had soaps. Like, so this is funny. Like everybody, like all the kids.
Had soaps.
Yeah, man.
I was like, bro, I could remake them. I was looking up the trademark the other day.
Patent pending.
Yeah, the patent. The patent's expired.
No way.
So
Somebody
I was
needs
like,
to get on that.
bro, I can come out with some soaps. Like that shit would still be fun right now.
Yeah. You know what's funny, man, is like I tried my hardest, but I was always like a fat kid. You know what I mean?
You weren't good.
I was never any good, but in my head, like I was killing the game.
You're agile. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for a big kid, I was pretty agile, but I was never afraid to take a fall.
Okay.
Like I tried my hardest and I ate shit often.
Dude, I loved going to this. Honestly, like when I moved out of there is when my life went downhill. But like I had like a really sweet childhood being next to, because I was good at it. It was part of my identity. Man, I love skating. As soon as I moved, I didn't have the skate park. There was nothing I was really good at. And then like I was just a pothead. I just looked at drugs.
Oh yeah, you found
I found my niche.
Yeah, that was it. It's funny. I remember that had to have been like all through elementary school. Like I skated a lot and into middle school a lot.
That's so funny. Yeah, because I was thinking, man, if you grew up in Cooper City, you probably went to Brian Piccolo.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I remember.
I lived there up until 4th grade. I lived in Embassy Lakes.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I used to skate all through Embassy Lakes and everything. And
I went to Embassy Creek.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I went to Cooper Elementary School, Pioneer, and then eventually Cooper High, kind of, you know what I mean? I spent, I guess my freshman year, I think I made it, a couple grades in or a couple months in, and then I ended up leaving. I was, to go back, like ever since I was young, like there's always been something like I felt was different than me. Just the way I thought, like, I always felt like, and I think it comes back to, before I ever left Dania, to kind of just like throw this out, like, I never really, I always tried to like hang out with somebody. I was always, I was never allowed around the block, right? I was never allowed to go fully around the block. I had to stay on that street for whatever reason.
Well, for safety.
Yeah, for safety, I guess. But in my head, I still...
like, man, why couldn't they let me go around the corner?
You know what I mean? And I always felt like I was like missing out. I was always missing out when the kids rode the bikes onto the other side. Like the abyss is what I thought of it as. crazy to me is like I was always chasing the next thing. Even as a young kid, I remember I remember some crazy shit had happened across the street from my house in Dania. It was like a drug bust, right? And like I think there was like 5 or 6 people like took off running. There was black SUVs that pulled up, and then me and my buddy Eddie were playing like catch in the front yard, and he threw the ball and everything was going on. I got pegged in the face with the ball. I remember my mom screaming, get in the house, this and that, and we had gotten into the house, and like the very next day, Eddie wanted to go around the block, like all that kind of like dissipated, or the craziness from across the street. And I remember the first time I went around the block, we found a gun, like right over by 441.
How old were you?
We had to have been like 5 or 6,
Wow.
something like that, because I was just in first grade, so it had to have been like 6 years old. And I even remember when Eddie grabbed it, I was like, "This is a fucking terrible idea," And thank God nothing happened. But I remember telling my mom about this. Like, hey, like this and that happened.
What do you do with the gun?
I don't remember exactly if we grabbed it or we told somebody. I believe we left it there, but I do remember like Eddie grabbing it, and me just like not one. I'm like, this is not okay. You know what I mean? I was still like that agile, like I didn't want to fuck with it. Yeah. And I remember my mom like scolding me, like, "What the fuck were you doing around the block? You shouldn't have been doing that." And then like from that point on, I was like, okay, we just lie. If we're gonna do something, we just lie, And like from there, like in that same.
It's so funny because that's exactly how it's like you tell the truth once and you get in trouble, so you're like never doing that again.
Never, And from that point on, like I made stories up, I lied,
and then it's like if you lie and get caught, like you're still whatever, you're gonna deal with it. But like, if you tell the truth, you're definitely gonna get in trouble.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell the truth, you know? I deal with that with my stepdaughter right now. And that's kind of like a trippy thing. Like, cause I see me, like, obviously she's not my, my blood
child. But she still has the same tendency.
Same tendency at it. Like she could see, like, I could tell the truth. They're telling me to tell the truth. But if I tell the truth, there's a chance that I'm going to, I'm going to get in trouble for it. And I guess that was just kind of my thought. I think a lot of damage happened. Like there was an older kid in the neighborhood that had eventually like taken advantage of me. And that was something that's like, I believe a lot of my insecurities and these crazy fucking thoughts in my head like started from there. I was probably 5, 6 years old. He was probably 13, 14 years old. So he didn't even know what the fuck he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I was playing with his G.I. Joes and his toys, this and that. And, this had happened. And I remember like, so for the next 20 years until the time I got clean and started doing step work, I carried this with me, and I thought I had put myself in this situation, that I chose to do this, all this, and I carried all this guilt. And I remember like the first time that guilt and that shame and that confusion like went away is when I started using Xanax.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like I had smoked weed and I had drank all before all this shit. Now I don't think that one incident is what caused me to be an addict, but I can guarantee you that it definitely
played a part. Yeah.
Played a major part, along with, all these other things that had happened, I remember smoking weed, drinking, all these things, and it was all right. You know what I mean? It was cool. Like I was only doing it because you were doing, or not necessarily you, but the other person was doing it. Yeah. I remember there was this Albertsons on, it was on Palm and Griffin.
It's still there. I think
it's a Publix now. So it was an Albertsons, but before it was an Albertsons, I think it was a Winn-Dixie or something, and they had shut down. And like, I remember as a kid, the same thing, like, I broke into this with a bunch of kids and we just started breaking shit all inside of there. Windows, fucking, bulbs, like stealing shit, but that we were never going to use. And like, that was cool, but I was only doing that because you guys were, or, they were, doing it with me. But I remember when I eventually like took Xanax, like I was like, boom, figured it out. And I remember that happening in middle school. And from probably 7th grade on, like my absolute goal was to keep that substance in my body at all fucking times. It was like my solution. I remember prior to any of this happening, I knew there was something wrong with my thinking. Like I'd attempted suicide, not to the point to where anybody knew, like I was too much of a chicken shit to actually fucking kill myself. But like I'd put the belt around my neck, I would try my hardest. And I think back, like I was an 8-year-old kid, 10 years old kid, whatever, however age, like if I heard that today, like, I would like, what could be possibly going on in your life right
Yeah.
now that cause you that much pain to where you
As a
just,
kid, yeah,
yeah,
because when you see kids, you're like, man, you got no problems, no stress going on, like whatever. But like sometimes, like you just don't feel like you fit in the world, like you unwanted, pushed aside, like nothing really matters. It's crazy.
it's insane, right? Because all those things you just said, I remember
Hmm.
sharing out front in front of some people, and this girl that I had went to middle school with, and then some of high school with, or shared with me after. I don't remember how it went down. She was like, "You're the popular kid in school. What are you talking about?" I was like,
Wow.
"What do you mean?" She's like, "Everybody wanted to be your friend." And I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking in my head, it's like, you got this distorted. Nobody they only were around me because I was capable of getting this, that, and a third, or
Uh-huh.
I was this or that. And like at the end of the day, she's like, I don't remember a group of people you couldn't have walked up to and just started hanging out with. And
Hmm.
I had to look back at it. It blew my fucking mind because there wasn't a group like from
Yeah.
the jocks to the skaters to the
Uh-huh.
the musician, everybody in high school, middle school, it didn't matter. I was friends with.
Hmm.
We might not have hung out every single day, but my mind told me all of those things. Nobody likes you. You're not worth it. You're stupid. And the only time those thoughts would go away is when I used, right? So for a long time, like I never, I never wanted to live. I never wanted to wake up to the next day. And like, this is going to sound crazy. I'm sure you've heard it before, but drugs saved my life at a youth.
Yeah, who knows what else you would have got into? Yeah.
I don't know if I would have took my life or not until the point like I started using it at this age and I couldn't stop. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't, at that point, like I couldn't stop. It wasn't that I was like physically addicted. It was Xanax. I know there was a physical addiction to it most likely, but like I couldn't feel the way I felt without it. Like, I wake up in the morning if I didn't have, this certain substance or, whatever it was, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I just hated who I was no matter what. I became combative at high school. In high school, I got into a lot of fights. Any type of authority figure, I'd cuss out.
Did you ever play football?
I didn't. So
Okay.
that was another thing. So in seventh grade, I used to do a lot of the BMX, the
Uh-huh.
skating, skateboarding. I was a big guy, blew my ACL out on a bicycle, right?
Wow.
I was doing a jump, and this is like what introduced me to Percocet, man, too.
Wow.
So like at this time, like I'd already kind of I'd eaten Xanax here and there. It wasn't like this full blown, thing. But like I remember, going into the doctor having surgeries, and my mother, like I didn't know she was like involved in like addiction or alcoholism and stuff like that when I was younger. I knew there was something going on. I didn't understand what the hell was going on, but she knew that there was something wrong with like our family, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or at least her side of the
Mhm.
family. And when the doctor was like, we're going to have to give him something for pain, she was like, no, 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 no. Like, I don't want him taking this or that. And
Mhm.
like, I had never taken a Percocet or seen one in my life. I was like, no, 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 I'll be all right. If the doctor says that, that's what I need. And I don't know how, a 14-year-old kid convinced, his mother to change her
Yeah.
mind, but she held him. She held him. And I remember sitting in my bed and taking them and not really realizing I was getting high, but I can look back and I think
You felt good.
I felt good,
Mhm.
against all other things. Cause I remember I was outdoors all the time, and like this 6-month period after I blew my ACL, I had surgeries, I was on a crutch and a cast. I was just inside my house.
Mhm.
I couldn't go out and do the things. And like that's where like my friends also like kind of like switched. Cause like I said, I did a lot of skating and stuff like that. And we'd smoke weed every once in a while. And like I always had so many different groups of people coming, from my two older brothers, knew the older kids in the
Mhm.
neighborhood. So I knew the older kids.
Were your brothers into drugs too?
I had my two older, but that's what like kind of like introduced me to
Mhm.
all
I
this.
figured, I just wasn't sure.
So both of my brothers were involved in drugs. My brother Ray, at 15 years old, he got sent back to the Bahamas with my father. So when my mother and my father split, my father's Bahamian. He was born in America, but he's got dual citizenship, and he lived in the Bahamas for most of my young to adult life. And
Mhm.
now he's just moved to the state or back to the States in the last year or so.
Did your mom end up marrying that boyfriend or staying with him?
Stayed with him long enough to where in Florida it's considered a marriage where you get half.
Okay.
I don't know what it's called, but I think they were together like 12 years, and after I don't know, after like 7 years in Florida, it's like if you're filing taxes together and you're doing this, live in a home and the home split, like after a certain amount of time, I think like
it's like equivalent.
Yeah, it's the equivalent.
But you saw this guy as a stepdad.
At first, I saw this guy as a stepdad, and like I was talking, there's this rift. You know, I could tell between my older brothers and him.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I didn't see it. I just saw him as, you know, another father figure. You know, I liked him for the most part as much as I could remember until the time my oldest brother Ray, when we were about 15. So Brandon and Ray, you know, they used drugs. They also sold shit, and they always had kids in and out of the house. And I remember that being something that I was attracted to. Whatever Brandon said, these kids listened to. You know what I mean? When he said, be here at 8:15, they're there at 8:14, you know, waiting to knock on the door. At least that was my perception of it. And I remember everybody always being at my house partying. Once Brandon got a little older, but I remember Ray kind of getting into drugs, a lot of fighting. I remember he kicked somebody's door in at the age of like 15, and a whole shitload of trouble happened to where he got shipped off to the Bahamas. And like Ray, like I said, was like one of my idols. And in my head, you know, this is Paul's fault, my mother's boyfriend. And from then I just didn't trust him. You know what I mean? You got rid of my oldest brother. You couldn't deal with him, so you just like kind of ship him away. And I listened to my oldest brother, Ray. He told me that's what happened. And obviously that was his perspective as a 15-year-old kid, you know what I mean? Not looking at his part as I kind of look at now. And then I watched the turmoil between my other brother, Brandon, and Paul. Now, both my mom and Paul were, you know, they're alcoholics. You know, they didn't go to meetings. My mom, like I said, eventually did. I had no idea what was going on. But there was always drinking, crazy blowouts in the house, fighting, broken, you know, chairs, glasses, you know, some shit. And it was chaos. And I remember my brother Brandon always having friends over and partying, and Paul always trying to stop it. Like an adult probably should, you know what I mean? But in my head, I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, you know? And they'd get into fist fights. And like, it brought on to this thing. And then I watched the way, you know, my mother and him started interacting. It became more often that they would be violent with one another, yelling and screaming. Now, I'll be honest, I can't remember Paul ever like physically laying his hands on my mom. I don't think that would have been smart for him back then. I do remember my mother putting hands on him a lot. And I absorbed all that shit, the chaos and all this other stuff. I guess if my mom hated him, my brother didn't like him, I just eventually started not fucking liking the guy. You know, I could look back, this guy supported us, put a house over our head, put us in a good neighborhood, all these, you know, things. But after a while, once I was a little older, I just felt like a burden to him. I remember walking at, like, I finally got those Sean John jeans that you were talking about. And I got the, you know, Ralph Lauren t-shirt, whatever it was, you know. I remember being reminded that myself or my mother didn't get that he paid for that. I purchased that for you. Remember that when you go to school.
Yeah, and like sometimes it's like, you know, because I grew up like in a nice neighborhood, and like, dude, my dad bought me a lot of shit. But like, I do remember like not even wanting stuff at a point because it would be used against you in like, oh, well, I did this for you. Oh, well, I do that, or, you know, whatever. So it's like sometimes not having shit is better than someone saying, well, I got you this, so you need to be like this, or you need to do a certain thing, or you know, as like a means to control you. And I get it now as an adult, but that's how it felt as a kid.
Yeah. And like sometimes I almost think my mother would do it just to piss him off, you know, or she just didn't think about it, you know, whatever it is. Cause I remember like being like apprehensive, like when it was time to go to school, or, you know, when summer was coming to a close and it was time to go back to school, we'd go shopping, and I'd be like, I don't think he's going to be happy you just bought all this shit for me. And I'm thinking that in my head, you know, but she doesn't seem, because at a point my mother had stopped working. She used to, it was crazy, man. I remember my mom, like when I was younger, she's developed some mental health issues and stuff like that. But I remember like going to the swap shop. Well, you know, the swap shop off of Sunrise.
Right here.
Yeah, bro. So I remember going there.
Brass knuckles.
Yeah, all that crazy, you know, bag.
Switchblades.
anything, the fake gold chains and
all
all
the
the
little baggies.
the little baggie. That's what I was talking when
Yeah.
you get the little plastic baggies.
The Batman ones,
Mhm.
whatever.
You know, whatever it is. And I remember, you know, before I was old enough.
Dude, yeah, they would sell it to like a 5-year-old.
They didn't
give a fuck. They would sell a 5-year-old child a switchblade, a scale, and like a little thing of baggies and porn. Remember they had like fucking porn cassettes and shit.
Oh,
in there?
and they had everything. They had magazines. They had the cassettes. I remember I bought
You could be like 5 years old.
They didn't give a shit,
That was
man.
crazy.
Oh my god! I think the first scale I ever bought was from the swap shop, and I couldn't have been any older than 14. Like if somebody, and it's like, you know, and I was, like I said, I was always overweight. I was a little chunky kid. Like, you know, he's not using this to prep his chicken or something like that. This little fucking kid's gonna be getting high, you know. And they would have, and then they'd bargain with you for it too.
Yeah, and then you'd have to bargain back, and they'd kick you out of the store or whatever. But it's like you could get dropped off there at 10 years old, and when you leave, you're 25.
Yeah,
you know,
that's it.
you got the whole kid.
Yeah, it was frank. But I remember my mom like hustling these guys. Not hustling, but doing the wheeling and dealing, you know.
At the swap shop.
At the swap shop. And she was this confident, powerful, like,
I'm gonna go there tomorrow. I miss that place.
yeah, I live right down the street
Me
from
too.
it.
I never go there.
Right, you know? That shit is crazy, man. I wonder how it is right now.
I know the guy who owns it is like crushes it, and he's into exotic cars.
Yeah.
So he keeps some of his exotic cars at the swap shop, like on display now. He must have like 100 cars. Who knows? I haven't been there since I was a kid.
I haven't been there since I was like, I think the last time. So the last time I was there, I was
They still have a drive-in. How crazy is that?
That may have been the last time, you know.
The drive-in?
The drive-in. I think it was like year one. I don't know if you remember that movie. Like, I pulled up into there. Me and my buddy started smoking. We had a blunt roll. We started walking. I was like, this is the dumbest fucking movie I've ever seen. Let's go get some Coke, man. And like it went on from there. But I think one of my last memories of the swap shop is going there with like some speakers that I'd like snatched out of my Caprice, and I sold them to like the people there for like $40 or whatever it was.
It's really such a beautiful ecosystem. It's like you could buy drugs, draw any type of paraphernalia, put wheels on your car, put speakers. Like everyone got their speakers and window tints.
Tint your windows,
and it'd always be horrible.
Yo, but the trippiest shit is there's this cat Joe, man. I think he's dead now, dude. But not to say like it's what happens when we use. I had sold these speakers. I'd made a couple bucks off of them, and I remember this guy just walking up to me and saying, "Yo, dude, you owe me like $20." I was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And then he's like, "JoJo's place, this and that." There's a bar back in there. So I literally just got $40 to go get high with, and some guy that I like finagled out of like a 20 bag of blow, like I don't know, like a week or two prior, just happens to be there at the swap shop. And like I'm like, okay, well, here's this. Can you give me any more? And like it just seems to be the perpetual situation in my life, you know. You know, I was like one of the last times like seeing my mother when I was younger, you know, like be this confident woman, and like the breakdown from that that whole shit. Like I was front row seat watching all this shit go down. You know, I found myself in active addiction. I remember feeling like I almost had to treat like women that same way, like putting people down and stuff like that to like build myself up. And it just never was a good feeling. Like, and since like recovery and stuff like that, like I have this like this empathy for my mother and women in general, you know, with that situation, that like kind of killing me, you know, watching my mom go from that. And like today, you know, my brother supports her in like this trailer, and it's a nice trailer. Everything's nice. Everything's paid for, but it's like, it's not like what my mother used to be, you know, and it's kind of difficult, you know. And I for a long time when I was using, like I treated my mother the same way I watched my stepdad treat her. Like shit, you know, she didn't have a job, she didn't have anything, but whatever she did have, I'd constantly try to take from her and stuff like that.
When did the using go from like fun partying to like using, you know?
So that's a funny story, man, because I was actually on my way to that. Like when I was 17, 18 years old, you know, it was fun. You know, there was this like party go kind of thing going on. And then I think by the time I was leaving Cooper City, because I'd moved out of Cooper City about 2006. I remember watching all my friends graduate high school. I watched them, some of them go on to college, and I was installing impact windows living in my brother's house. He had just bought a house in like North Lauderdale. I was catching DUIs. I was totaling pickup trucks. I had the dream car that I always wanted that I blew the engine on. And like, I can never keep anything. I would always be able for like a 6-month period, build some stuff, get a good position in the job, maybe even get an apartment, whatever it was, get my car, insurance on it for a short period of time. And then I realized that I couldn't keep anything. Like I could never keep anything. And the hatred for myself came back. That same hatred I had for myself when I was young, that the using kind of like took away. Like I remember like hating myself. And I remember before I had turned 18, there was this place called Spectrum, right? So I'd gotten it. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, Spectrum.
I almost got court ordered there for a year,
right.
The adolescent program.
Yeah. So when I was a juvenile, I got arrested at this place, JoJo's. It was a bar. And I remember, doing, that outpatient stuff at this Spectrum place. And I remember showing up the Spectrum or the place there right before I was 18. And as I remember it, I couldn't fucking like do this anymore. I was like, I'm done with this. I want to stop using. I show up there. Either they were closed. It was too late. I just showed up without. I didn't know how any of this worked. All I remember is like these guys talked to me about like not using drugs, and getting in trouble and arrested. And I showed up there and they said I needed to be 18, as I remember. I probably was high when I went in there. And when they told me that, I was like, oh, well, I got at least another year to keep using. And I fucking continued to destroy my life, over and over again. I got arrested probably a good dozen times on driving on a suspended license. The fun of using was completely gone by then. These little things they're not little things, these big things that were taken out. I remember running on the streets and then being relieved when I got arrested and spent a night in jail or something. I never found, like, there was never any joy out of using. Now I got joy out of like copping, like when I got the drugs and I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah, it's like this weird thing, like when you start using like really bad, like you have this like odometer, and it gets to a point where like your happiness can only go like up to here.
Yeah,
it's like got drugs.
Yeah,
and, it's like,
and that's the peak of your fucking week, whatever it is.
It's as high as it goes, and then it's like back to trying to find money for drugs, and then it's so down and little up, but it's like you live in this weird like. Almost like how like an animal. If you shake food for my cats, they just go nuts. Yeah. And it's like you almost live at that point where you're just moping around all day until someone shakes food. Yeah. That's kind of how, for me being addicted to opiates was, where like I was all miserable and depressed. And then I'd find $12 and think I fucking won the lottery and be like, haha, fucking luck's about to change, bitch. Just fucking came up. Yeah. And you're like skipping and, singing songs or whatever because you just copped a little lick or whatever.
Yeah, I remember, to go back, I remember copping off of Dixie in Dania. I was in Dania. I was off Dixie Boulevard, and I had copped some, I was done with the pills at that moment, and I'd got some heroin. I remember, like, happy I got it, but I remember needing to find, like, a bottle of water and a cap to mix to shoot with, and I'm walking towards the bus stop, and I seen a smashed beer can, and it just kind of been raining, and the top of the beer or the bottom of the beer can was facing up with a little bit of water on it, and that was my thank God moment. Like, wow. Oh, thank God. And I grabbed this fucking beer can
with
rainwater in it, stood right next to the fucking bus stop, fucking poured my dope in there, fucking pulled and used right there on Dixie Highway.
No filter?
I think I had like a little fucking
there you
cotton.
Go.
Yeah. from a fucking yeah. I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't have stopped. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have stopped me. You know, and what's crazy is
yeah, it's wild.
Like these bottoms we talk about. Like I you would have thought. Like I remember in like 2009, right? I think it was 2009. So right after 2008, my oldest brother had bought a home. I was living in his house. I was working for him. All this stuff happened. I was doing impact windows and doors at the time. market crash, right? So all like no more building homes, all this shit had stopped, abrupt stop. And my brother just up and he went back to the Bahamas and kind of left me and my mom his house in North Lauderdale. And the only thing we had to do is keep the water and the lights running. And I had no job from the year, I think from like the end of 2008 to the beginning of 2010. So for like 2 years, we lived in this fucking house. And the only thing I did was find a couple dollars, go get either some Xanax. And I remember I had done some work, and that's what introduced me to the blues, man, is I couldn't find Xanax. Like that's all I ever wanted to use. And I remember not being in so I had these two brothers, right, that I'd copped from. The younger brother didn't have any Xanax, and the older brother always had blues. And I called him to see if he had some Xanax. He's, no, I got these blues. I was like, I had $100. It's like, what can $100 get me? He's like, oh, I'll get you, I think it was 10 at the time or whatever. And I'd maybe done them a handful of times, but I remember that was the time that like I'd gotten, like that's what happened. I got into those and like it was on and running from that point on. Like I got physically addicted. I'd used them prior before, but never physically got addicted. And I remember.
Yeah, I always say, like, I always thought it was a myth. I did pills for like a year and I'm like, you can't get addicted to these. Like when people used to say like, oh, be careful, those are like heroin. I'm like, no way.
Not a chance.
But then I just never had them for that year.
Yeah.
So like I just didn't have them one day. And I remember feeling it in school and I remember thinking I had a fever. And then I remember thinking like maybe the pills are making my body cold because I feel really hot. I did one and felt totally fine.
That's insane.
And
dude.
then that's when I was like, well,
this is high school. This is high school you're in?
This was ninth grade.
Ninth grade,
So
freshman year.
I remember being like, let's just sweep this under the rug and I guess let's just keep doing them. When you experience like real dope sick for the first time, it's like, you think you have a hold of this thing and then you realize it has a hold of you.
Yeah. I'm still kind of blown away every once in a while when I realize like I had used in high school. Don't get me wrong, like I was always using in high school, but like that was like an afterthought. Like if I had some left over, I would use. You know what I mean? I remember one time like doing coke in the classroom and being like, "This is a fucking terrible idea. I'll never do this again." But
dude, I used to do coke in class, like it was drinking water. I have people that come up to me now. Be like, dude, you're the first time I ever saw coke. Geometry class 100 times. Like I would be crushing up pills, Roxys and Oxys with my hand up, answering questions, geeked out of my mind. Dude, I used to smoke. I've smoked crack in class and burped the smoke into a backpack. I don't know. It's funny because it's like now that I'm an adult, I think back and I was just like,
imagine a 15-year-old kid with his head stuffed in his backpack.
Blowing crack, burping it in there.
Yeah, dude, I remember, like I was saying, I remember it was one time
That's why I need to do the podcast to verify, because I have people on here that used to me.
Like, what'd you do? Smoke a little bit too much weed, Brian?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of times when I got clean, people were like, yeah, I don't know, 17, are you really an addict? We were out to eat with Eve.
Yeah.
I smoked crack with Eve. She was on the podcast.
That's
so
crazy.
People always bring that up. But I'm like, yeah, Eve will verify. I was there smoking crack with her.
And Eve doesn't even look like an addict either, dude. This lady's too sweet. So I don't know if she's
the nicest person in the world. But I wouldn't believe that Eve was a drug addict if I hadn't smoked crack with her.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like the same thing. It's because I remember when I first heard, if anyone who's listening, go back and listen to Eve's story. She was on the podcast or whatever. Yeah, it was so cool. But the first time I heard her story, I was rolling my eyes. This lady's talking about God the whole time, having a spiritual awakening or whatever. And I'm like, I just can't get with this, And then I was like, oh my God, I know this woman. And then I'm like, where do I know her from? And then I had this flashback of us getting high together.
Yeah.
That's one of my miracles for me, is because it's like I was wondering, like, do I really need to go to these meetings? Am I an addict? Do I really want to be here forever? Maybe it was just a phase. And then,
dude, I've listened to your story and thought that. I'm like, you're 17, dude. It must have been a phase, dude. Yeah. You're over it now. But it's not how it works, man. It's not how it works.
Well, I mean, what I always tell people is like, it's not about whether you're an addict, it's whether or not you want to be in recovery. So I choose to work steps, have a sponsor, and go to meetings. To me, that defines, as being in recovery and having a service commitment. And it's like, as long as you do those 4 things, you're in recovery.
Yeah.
And it's not about whether or not you could go out and use or whatever, or if you have the disease or you don't have the disease. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm an addict just by the way I do anything else. They're like, don't order milkshakes. Brian will fucking, he'll drink yours.
Well, you said something interesting, like how you define, like, it's not necessarily about being an addict. It's more about like, am I in recovery or not in recovery? I hear people, like, for me, I work steps. I try to like, so in my 12-step program, I've always went to meetings since I've gotten clean. I may have went some time maybe during COVID where I was missing meetings and I wasn't doing the Zoom thing. But I've always been in contact with my sponsor, even if it's once a week or something like that. It's just regularly, I've always, all my friends pretty much are in recovery other than like, a handful of people here and there. And I'll hear people talk about, going years without going to meetings or not working step or, whatever, not being in the process. I've always had an H&I commitment, which is, bringing meetings into like prisons, jails, treatment centers and stuff like that. And I hear these people talk about not doing certain things like that or a home group and being okay. Like me, like I do all of these things constantly and I'm still batshit crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like my mind will still spin and all this shit happens. So it's not so much about me, like you said, like being an addict or not an addict. It's
or
like
abstinence
or whatever it is. Like I love the process. Like I continuously see things about myself that if I wasn't in this process, I would have never seen before.
And it's about keeping the doors open for the next person. And it's like, if everyone got clean and then just kind of fizzled out, what the fuck would happen to recovery? You know what I mean? So it's like, there's so many different aspects to it. It's like, one, you could use. Two, it enhances every part of my life anyways. Three, if I'm not doing those things, I start to tear down things really quickly. I start living in a victim mentality. I start getting more resentful at people. I start blaming others, so...
Oh, the blame thrower.
Yeah, the blame thrower. There you go.
It's funny, like, I, like, just today, I wasn't going to talk about this, but, like, me and my brother kind of have, this company going. It's his company. I'm an electrician.
Brandon?
Yeah, it's Brandon.
Okay.
So that's also what's crazy, right? So my brother was involved in all this shit, got arrested one time. That was it. He's done. I'm not using drugs. I'm not selling drugs no more. Became an electrician, successful beyond, you know what I mean? Great life, beautiful family, beautiful wife, beautiful home, which he bought my grandparents' old home, large property out in Davie. It just shows like we came from the same place, same environment. He went one way and I went the other. I had to get arrested. I don't know how many times, and still at that point it didn't change. But like today, so I've been kind of like trying to start this business for the last couple of years. I haven't been on the books and so on and so forth. I still get paid hourly with incentive and stuff like that. And like I was bad. I was like, look, man, I need to be a part of society because of recovery. Like getting paid under the book, it's great, but I was like, I need to be a part of society. I felt like shit about it. You know what I mean? I finally, after 4 years of doing this, got, now I'm on the books from last year to now. And, it was like this bittersweet moment because like I got increased $3 an hour. But now I'm on the book, so I'm almost making less money than I was 2 weeks ago. And like when I talk about recovery, like I immediately was like, what the fuck, dude? I did the right thing and now I'm paying for it. But the truth is there's so many more benefits to that. Like I feel better now. It's been something that's been weighing on me just because of like I want to move forward in my life. I got 8 years clean and technically, I have no job, that I'm fucking unemployed, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have had that perception prior to this shit, When I got clean, like I had nothing. I always talked about like not being able to be responsible, not being able to pay, my rent and all these other things. And I remember step work and meetings, like it had definitely changed that shit for me.
What event led you to get clean?
Okay, so
you had to go into treatment multiple times.
No.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you had gone to Bark or something.
Well, I went. Okay, so there's this cat, Brad. He passed away. He was my dog. Like that was my my go-to. Everybody in the neighborhood hated me and him. He had convinced me to go to Bark, to the detox, because they were going to give me, you know, Subutex and to make me feel better. But before we went to Bark, we had to get high. And this was fucking like a complete like God's scenario thing. I'd stole a whole bunch of shit right before. Me and him had stolen a whole bunch of shit that I said I'd never do. I fucking did it. We stole a bunch of shit, got a bunch of pills. I remember like, and this is like these events. Like I got to talk about. I'm screaming at this girl on my phone out front of his house in his neighborhood, and I got a pocket full of Roxy's on me, and a cop, I'm talking about out of fucking nowhere, pulls up behind me. So I didn't even see him coming, pulls up, and he was
in a car?
In the fucking cop car, in the patrol car, and he steps out. I know him. I believe he was the arresting officer for my mother when she got arrested years ago. I can't remember if it was the same one, but he knew me by my last name. Started asking me some questions. He asked if he could search me, and I said, "No, you can't. You could pat me down. You know what I mean? If you're afraid, you know what? I don't remember how I said it. I think he might have gave the. He said, "Can I pat?" I don't remember how it went down, but all I remember saying, "You can't fucking search me," you know. And he patted me down. He didn't feel nothing. He was like, "I have some complaints that there's some arguing going on here." And I said, "This is the broad daylight. My buddy's right here. Let me just knock on the door and again." And I turn around, and I look to his fucking house, and the car's gone. So he's not even at the house anymore. He had fucking left, I guess, with his dad to go to Walmart. So,
oh, wow.
So I'm like calling him like, "Yo, I got this fucking cop." And he's like, "You're beat, dude. Like, I'm gone. I don't know what you want to do." And I remember this cop just letting me go. And then I remember later on that day, like we were running out of pills. And he was like, "Okay, it's time to go to Bark." I'm like, "No, it's time to." And he's like, "No, they'll give you something. It'll make you feel better." I'm like, "All right." And I remember having to beg my mom to take me to a detox, like her junkie son. And she's like, "You think you really need to go?" And I remember going there, him getting into like an altercation with the intake lady. I don't know if you know how this place works. So like back in the day, you had to go in, do your intake, and then they tell
We'll call you.
We'll call you. Exactly. So I didn't know any of this. I've lived in Broward County my whole life. I didn't know what a halfway was. I didn't know what treatment was. Didn't know what a detox was. None of this shit. So they lose it inside there. She throws him out, threatens to call the cops. He looks at me and he's like, "Let's go." And for whatever reason, I was like, "Nah, dude, I'm going to see what this lady has to say." She did my intake and she goes, "We got a bed ready for you." And at that point, I'm like,
wow.
Well, I didn't know it was a wow moment. I just thought that's how that fucking
like,
worked.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they never have a bed for like a walk-in, whatever.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah.
You know, I had to be told that months later or weeks later, whatever it was, when I finally started like talking to people.
Yeah. So just for people who are listening, this is a county-run facility for Broward County. It's one of the best treatment centers that's state-run that Florida has. I haven't even heard of other states having stuff like this. Normally you go in, you do your assessment, and they're like, we'll let you know when a bed's ready. It could be fucking 3 weeks, and they're not just going to call you and say, "Hey, come in now." You got to go there every single day, see if a bed's there. Are people that sleep outside to get in.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to get a bed there. You have to really show that you're willing. I had someone who works there tell me, like, if you want to get in, okay, run outside, get real sweaty, pour alcohol all over yourself, and then tell them that you're suicidal, and then they'll take you.
Holy shit,
This is from an employee.
That's fucking insane. Because I'll be honest, man.
What the fuck?
If it didn't happen the way it happened, I would have never went in. And on a turn of things, once I walked in, the first kid I saw there, me and that other kid, Brad, had robbed for $400 like maybe a week before. And he was a tall motherfucker, in shape. I mean, not really in shape anymore. He'd been running and using and shit like that. But I remember him being like 6 foot and change. And I was like, just wasn't doing well. And he looked at me and I looked at him. And we just sat next to each other, waited for our Suboxone.
Didn't say a word.
Didn't say a word about it. Never talked about it. We were in there together, and we never mentioned anything. I think a couple of years later, we had seen each other at a meeting again and kind of talked about it. And he's like, "That wasn't even my money, blah, blah, blah."
Cool.
I was like, "All right, cool, man." I thought I was about to get punched in the mouth,
Yeah. So I feel like people say that when they get robbed.
Yeah. They don't want the embarrassment or something. No, I don't know.
I've done it a couple of times. And they're like, "Oh, they weren't even for me." I'm like, sure, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, my buddy, it's funny you even say that. My buddy had like robbed somebody and like I had no money in it, but the same thing. I was like, "Yo, that was my shit, man. Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah, we went halves, man." He's like, "Oh, I'll give you some back."
Break you off.
Yeah, and I was like, "All right, cool." And I had no money in it.
Yeah.
I think I sponsor that guy today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
He doesn't call me, but
by name.
Yeah, by name. A little bit about me. Like I You know, I can't do this podcast without talking about like the brain surgeries and shit like that. Like it just, for some reason, it just, I can't, like it's that thing, like we're talking about either in recovery or not. Born a natural born fucking hater, dude. Everything's negative. Any and every situation that comes in my life, I naturally go to this negative thing. I remember I went to a treatment center to speak at this treatment center, and this kid that I hardly knew, you know, we both sit down, we're about to start speaking. It was right after a convention or whatever, so I was kind of hyped on that. And we sit down and the meeting's about to start and my whole stomach turns. And I remember one of the employees set like a glass of water down next to me, and it just like kind of like started looking weird. And I just stood up, grabbed my phone and pretended like I had a phone call, and I walked away. And I started telling the people, and I had like 18 months clean at this time. I started telling the employees at this treatment center, like, hey, something's fucking weird. We need to call an ambulance. And the first thing they go is like, did you take anything? And I remember being like so like uppity about like my recovery. I was like, don't you fucking know I got 18 months clean? No, I didn't take anything. Like these people don't even know who the fuck I am. I remember having a fucking seizure in the middle of the ambulance on my way to the hospital.
At a treatment center.
At a treatment center, you know? And I remember like I remember these two
The second you had a seizure, like he's getting high.
Well, I was in the ambulance when I was happening. I remember.
Wow.
So when the ambulance pulled up, they knew it was like a treatment center. And like I had my phone. I'm calling my brother. I'm like, yo, man, something weird's going on. I'm getting picked up by an ambulance. Think I'm going to go to the hospital. I didn't know that's what was going to happen. But my whole left arm was just numb. Like it's just pins and needles. And I couldn't fucking move it right. Like I would try to move my thumb. My pinky would go. And like it was just weird
Up
shit.
until that, you felt fine.
Fine. Other than like I had a stomach ache all day long, right? And at this point, I had spoken multiple times, so I didn't think I was nervous, but I was like, "Damn, I'm having anxiety over speaking." Like this ain't you. You don't do this, Ryan. And I remember waking up in the hospital with this guy with a syringe sticking it in my arm. And I remember waking up being like, you can't put down, I'm a fucking IV drug user. You can't do that. I haven't used. And he was like, I don't think you understand, man. You just had a fucking seizure, dude. It was bad, you know, this and that. We need this. And the neurosurgeon needs to talk to you. I was like, what? You know, and he comes in and in a matter of 3 minutes, he tells me that I have a softball-sized tumor on my brain, that I need to have emergency surgery and need to do it within 72 hours, and then fucking proceeds to walk out of the hospital room. I remember being on a second round of steps. I was on my third step, and I remember thinking to myself, like the third step's about like, you know, letting go and letting God kind of, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, here we are. You know what I mean?
Which honestly is why I stress the step process, is because it's like, what if you would have been like, oh, I could do the steps later?
Yeah.
What if you're like, oh, you know, I'll get to them when I get to them? You know what I mean? It's like what happens when like shit hits the fan, and you haven't done the work that you need. Yeah. You know, like I always say, like you don't put the hurricane shutters on during the storm.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, the storm is going to come. We just don't know exactly when. But like, dude, it's coming. Like there's going to be something within your first year, your first couple years. Sometimes it might be 5 years. Yeah. But like, dude, your girl's going to leave you. Someone's going to fucking do something. Your job's going to fucking whatever. Or it's all the good shit. Your life could get really good and then you could fucking use.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's
forget where you came from.
You know, it's funny because for those first 18 months, like I never missed a day calling my sponsor, even though I'd switched the sponsor, right? I never missed a day without calling my sponsor. And then when I eventually switched sponsor, never missed a day calling him. I never missed going to meetings. I never missed my step work. I also journaled every single day from the time I had like 90 days clean all the way up until the time I had like 3 and change. Like I never stopped journaling. You know, I remember questioning myself, like, because I would hear other people in the rooms with time close to me or less than me or even more than me going, oh, it's such a struggle to do this, and you know I'm struggling, and that's cool. It's like I'm nothing against them, but like I would hear, and I already told you, like my mind goes to this negative, like I'm like, why the fuck is this happening so, you know, so easily for me? It wasn't easy, but why am I so like prone to do it? Like in my head I'm like, the ball's gonna drop. The ball's going to drop. This is all fake. I only want to do this for whatever reason, you know, this and that. I even remember like, you know, I couldn't say, okay, it's me. Like I'm proud to do my stuff. It's me taking initiative. It's me doing that. Even I remember the day like the obsession to use was lifted. Like a lot of people don't remember this day, but I remember I had just over 90 days clean. I was sitting on my mom's front porch of her trailer, smoking one of her Virginia Slims ultralights.
That's the worst cigarette ever.
Right? It might not. I think it was a DTC ultralight 100, so it might have got worse. It was terrible, right? And I remember I looked up and I was like, I don't think I want to use ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember like that thought like just wouldn't come in my mind, like that urge. Like, don't get me wrong, I have the thought here and there to use, but I remember going like this obsession. Like I had to go, oh shit, I haven't thought about using. And then from that point, I went, there must be some chemical imbalance in my head that's doing, or in my body that's producing me to not want to use drugs. That's how like so entwined of like in my head, like we need to use. I remember watching like a game on the TV and going, everybody on this TV has to be using, you know? So I remember when the time came of the surgeries, they were like, okay, you're going to have to take narcotics. And I said, no, I'm not. Like, we could do it. You could put me under. We could do this, do whatever you got to do. And then we'll go from there. You know, so then I ended up in the ICU after the surgeries. They'd given me stuff in the ICU. But once I left that ICU, I didn't take any narcotics. It was ibuprofen, Tylenol 3s, all this stuff for that first month. You know what I mean? I was so terrified of like putting that stuff in my body and releasing this fucking demon in me, because I knew like I was after the first couple of days, like I was like, this shit sucks, but it's not as bad as what it was out there. And I rode that for a long while. I didn't, you know, once I left the hospital.
So what did the doctors say? That it was a tumor and they had to cut it out?
So what it was a benign tumor, and it was growing on the meninguloma. I can't pronounce it, but there's this layer of film that goes around your brain, between your brain and your skull. And this tumor had developed since I was a teenager.
Wow.
So, and I have a condition called MEN1. We haven't narrowed it down exactly, but they're almost 100% sure I have this. It's a rare condition. It's called MEN1. Or Min1, whatever you, and I can't pronounce it.
You know what's crazy? I have this like fear that like I have a headache and it's like a tumor.
Yeah. Watch out, dude. You know, now that you say that, like every headache I've ever had prior to this was probably because I had a fucking tumor, man. You know, I would always say, oh, I haven't ate today, I got a headache, or oh, it's my blood pressure, I can't see. No, dude, you had a tumor.
It's my blood pressure. My vision's blurry.
Yeah. And I'm walking down the track, fucking getting high, like, you know, no, it's because I haven't eaten today, I got a headache, you know.
Wow.
And then that was like I said, like, you know, so all this shit happened, and then it ended up getting infected, dude. The brain, so like they removed the skull flap, all this shit happened. I remember sitting at the house.
Dude, how does that happen? Because it's your skull. How does it get infected?
I don't fucking know, man. They never told me what the infection was or how it took, you know, whatever it was. They don't know. They did tests and they said it could have been this or it could have been that, but nobody really knows what happened.
Wow, that's scary.
Know? And I remember one day I just stood up to get out of the chair. Like I'd been there like a month. I went home and fucking liquid just started pouring out of my head.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. And I ran to the emergency and the liquid had stopped. And they're like, I don't know. We can't see anything, blah, blah, blah. They're like, okay, go home. And I was like, well, I see my doctor in 3 days, I think it was. Something, it was just a couple days. And by the time I seen him, like he started touching and like some fucking other shit came out. Then I came back the next day and he rushed me to the fucking, to the surgical room and had to perform another surgery. This time it was a lot different. So the whole area was infected, inflamed, you know, and I had to start calling my sponsor and everybody around me, man. Like, I don't think I can do what I did last time again. You know, and anytime I'd taken medication, any type of pain medication while I was in the hospital, you know, I'd call my sponsor, be like, hey, they're about to give me a dose. You know what I mean? It's just shit that I had to do. You know what I mean? And once again, like, you know, that addict mind, they're like, okay, as the time I go to leave, they're going to write me a prescription of Percocet. And I'm like, nah, don't even write me the script. Yeah. I'm not going to fucking, you're wasting paper. And they wrote it.
And they give it to you
anyway. Swear to God, they gave it to me anyway.
I've had surgery before. I told the guy, like, no Percocets, probably 5 times.
Yeah.
I'm half awake. He's like, here's your Percocet. I'm like, dude,
Wait, what?
I told him I was in recovery. I told him I don't need it.
Yeah.
And bro, he still gave it to me. And the thing is that it's easy to say no 3 or 4 times.
But one time,
Like, dude, I remember this one time I had said no to them like 4 or 5 times. That's when I threw my back out. And I was like, I don't want pills. And the first 3, 4 times, I'm like, get out of here.
yeah.
And the 5th time, a part of me was like, maybe I need them, you know?
Yeah.
And my mom walked in right then.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, wow, like that's how a relapse happens, just like that.
Just like that. I remember, so that last time they gave me a prescription after me telling them, don't do it. There's no point. You're wasting ink and you're wasting tree, you know? I'm on my way. I'd already called my girlfriend at the time. She was headed to the hospital, and I'm walking, like trying to walk, like, cause I'm all all jacked up and shit. And I'm going through my paperwork, and I look, and I said, that sure as fuck says Percocet right there. First thing I did, I grabbed the phone. I'm like, hey, yo, don't pick me up yet. Like, I'm already, because the pharmacy's right there in the hospital, and I'm trying to manipulate a way for her to go somewhere first and this and that. And she was like, what are you talking? I was like, just get here. You know what I mean? I tried. I was gonna do, I think I might have done it. And then something came over when she was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm on my way right now. I'll just wait if you want me to wait, this and that. I also had a house full of recovering addicts at that time,
I remember when I got clean, my sister had a surgery, and I started going through her drawers looking for these pills, and I was clean.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, what am I doing? But like, I just wanted to see what they were, And it's like sometimes it's like, man, the disease is so strong that like you have no intention on using, you don't want to use. And it's like, dude, nobody was home.
You just want to know what they
gave her. I just want to know you ever like, you want to look at them, you know what I mean? And it's like, I remember going through the drawers and I was like, what am I doing? And I remember like, it scared me because it's like, I don't want to get high. And here I am going through the drawers. Like, I know she's got pills here. I'm not even thinking I'm going to take them.
You just want to see. It's like, I think this disease has this way, right?
It's like this curious.
Right? They know they can't get it. Like, for me, this is how I think. Like, the disease knows it can't get me with saying, you want to take something right now. You want to get high right now. Because like I said, I've been through fucking brain surgeries, this, that, and the third. I never got high. I don't have the right to get high anymore. You know what I mean? But it could tell me, like, you're curious. You want to do this, you want to do that, and then you get into a position to where using is that much easier. So my disease tells me, like, I can't get them off the rip with saying, like, let's use, but like, let me get them to the bar. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whatever, or let me get them in a place.
I always tell people it's like there's times where I didn't intend on using, but it's 1 a.m. I just want to see what's going on at the gas station.
Yeah. I've been there,
It's like, I just want to walk by and see what's going on over there. Or what it does, that it's done for me, is like, you don't have to go use, just get in the car with them.
Yeah.
And there's times where I've ended up in the car with everyone who's going to go use. And I'm like, well, I'll go with them, but I'm not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And then here I am, like, forking over money, and they're like, I thought you weren't going to get anything. And you're like, shut the fuck up.
That was it. This is now, motherfucker.
Now we're in the car, And then as soon as the door shuts, the disease is like, we in the car already.
Yeah. It's funny, like, how things can switch, because like that just reminded me of like going out to eat after a meeting or something like that. Like I struggle with my weight. I've done it, like I've mentioned, since I was young, and I've lost some weight, and I've gotten good shape, and then gain weight back. And I hear everybody like, oh, let's go out to eat. I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. Oh no, then my head is like, you don't need to get anything to eat.
Just get a salad.
Or let's get a salad. And then I go, okay, I'm going to get a salad. Let me get a salad, but can you add 3 portions of chicken on that? You know what I mean? Or whatever. And a Coke.
And then someone doesn't want their fries.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I don't want them to go to waste.
You already ate the fries. Just might as well have a milkshake.
Exactly. It goes like that. It just starts tumbleweed, and then it just gets...
And then I get home, and it's like, you already ate bad tonight. You might as well just order more food.
Oh my God, the worst thing that ever happened was for COVID for me. This is going to sound terrible for anybody that had like even bad, like having, my old roommate was like, so I've watched people use this Uber Eats for I don't know how long, and every single time, like I'd be like, you guys are so fucking stupid, dude. Just make something at home, or you're paying X amount of dollars just to get this food delivered where you can just get in your car and go. And it was like during COVID, I was after work. He's like, and he ordered something on Uber Eats for us both, and it just came to the fucking door. I was like, this is fucking insane. And then the next day I downloaded the fucking app. And then I think within a month period of time, I'd spent like $500 on food. But other than the money, like how gross I felt about it. It was just like what can I get now? And then it gets addictive because now you got this app that shows me
so much food all over the place. You can order from 3 different places at the same time. You can order it on the way home.
Yeah.
And it's there.
Oh, that was the
and
bad
then you
one.
order and then the ice cream shows up first and you eat the ice cream first. You know? Like I've been getting crazy. I've been using Uber Eats, Grubhub, and Postmates.
Oh no,
the 3. I just because I'm like I want to know what's on each different app. You know,
I'm happy. I only got involved, and then you know what's fucked up? As I remember, like my order getting all jammed up, and I'm like, I'm never fucking using Uber Eats again, right? And I went like a week without using, right? I went a week. I remember, and they just send you this promotion. It's like, hey, if you spend $10 here, you get this free.
Hey, friend.
Hey, you know, I miss you. And it's like the drug dealer, like, hey man, I haven't heard from you. What's
Here's
going on?
Free one. Like, when did they ever give you a free one when you needed one? You know,
it never happened that way. You know,
but
it's just funny how that shit fucking works like that, man.
So what happened after your last surgery?
So my last surgery. So what had happened? I was working for a large company, and after that last surgery, I could no longer go back to the electrical field at that time. I was too much of a liability. I wear like a hard hat, like in my caps now. Like there's a bump cap inside this hat right now.
For what?
So this last surgery, so when they removed the bone flap, it was infected and they could not put the bone flap back. So right now I have a piece of my skull that's actually missing.
Wow.
So, and it's probably like a 3x4, 4x4 section of my skull that there's nothing there but, you know, hair, skin, and then brain underneath of it.
Wow.
So it's very, you know, anything can happen. I get popped in the head, whatever it is.
Oh my
it's
God.
dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, and so when that news kind of came, like I had a 5-year plan at this company, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to have, you know, all these things and blah, blah, blah. And that got put on hold, you know? So at that point, I ended up like hanging out at the house for maybe like 2-3 months, something like that. Maybe I don't even think it was that long. You know, I know they had paid, you know, the company I worked for was fucking fantastic. Shout out to C. Davis Electric. They're just an amazing company. You know, the people there were amazing. They never made me file for unemployment or anything like that. They just paid me 40 hours a week. They took care of my health insurance. I had fire, you know, insurance that I took care of everything I needed to take care of at that point. And then they eventually had to, you know, let me go. No hard feelings. You know, it was what it was. My plan was to work in treatment for a couple months until I can get this final surgery, because this one surgeon was telling me they could put this artificial, or not artificial, they could put this like prosthetic back in there. They don't use metal anymore, I guess, but it was like some type of prosthetic they were going to put in there. And at this time, I'd already had 2 botched surgeries from this particular surgeon. He moves out of state. You know, he has his partner, you know, comes out. They didn't do anything wrong or anything like that. I wanted some other opinion. So I found these guys at a UM, and he was like the top neurosurgeon at UM. He was on a list of like the top in the nation and shit like that. Wow. And I went and had a conversation with him.
You ever read Gifted Hands?
I haven't.
It's about this guy who's a brain surgeon. But
yeah. Oh man,
gotta read it.
That'd have been really cool for the podcast if me and you both had read it, and it went on to this long.
Well, let's redo it. Oh, you're right.
Right? And
love Gifted Hands.
But this guy told me, he's like, dude, man, you've won the lotto twice. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they went in there and they did surgery twice. You have no speech impediment. You have no, like, all your motor skills.
That's what the new surgeon said?
Yeah, that's when he was like.
But you weren't feeling that way, right?
No, when he started telling me, like, it made sense, man. I didn't like it. I didn't like hearing the news, but I'm a person that likes honesty. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit what the package is I don't care, or how it's wrapped. Like, just give me it real.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you're handing me shit, don't fucking put it in nice paper.
A Tiffany box.
Exactly. And this guy gave it to me. You know what I mean? He's like, look, man, your quality of life right now is hindered a bit, but like, you have all your motor skills. There's no foreseen thing that happened right as of right now, and this is now 2015, and I don't have anything that I have found yet that I'm not capable of doing. And he goes, I go in there for a third time, anything can happen. He said, your quality of life and the risk to reward is up to you. But as a professional, I will not be doing this surgery. If you want to find somebody else that's willing to do it, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I won't, but that's my professional opinion. Like, this guy could have took me for a ride,
whatever,
let's run it, got paid. But he was honest with me and upfront. And also, this came from a guy that had recommendations across the board. So at that point, I was like, okay, let's figure this out. Like, my life, like, I'll be honest, when I got let go from that job after, the second surgery, I went into a deep depression. I was gonna fucking kill myself. My roommate like knocked on the door and was like, hey dude, you want to sit in there all day again? Like, let's get out and let's start moving. And if it wasn't for her knocking on the door that day,
wow.
like, I don't know. I probably would have used, killed myself, one or the other. And I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and, I applied for a couple jobs at some treatment centers, recovery-based treatment centers. I was only planning on doing that for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that doctor gave me that news, like, I was like, okay, well, there kind of goes that fucking plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already been working, in treatment for a little while. It was only supposed to be like 3 months. And then I got this like thing. It's like, all right, let me like do the best I can. No matter where I went, like,
Mm-hmm.
because of recovery, I try to do the best I can. When I went back to electrical, like, I was the shopkeeper. I fucking cleaned that floor better than anybody's ever cleaned that floor. I took the trash out like nobody's ever taken the fucking trash out. When I showed up to this treatment center that I'd never thought I'd ever want to do, like, I wasn't that addict in Bark going, oh, I want to help people one day, I want to work in like, not a fucking chance. I was not that guy. I almost got into 3 fights with clients within the first couple weeks. I got put in the office. They're like, you can't talk to people like that. I'm like, yeah, but he said this and that. So I thought they're like, no, you can't do that. Thank God for that process, because I didn't know how to talk to people prior to working in treatment. I didn't know how to communicate with unruly people that didn't want to be communicated with, and stuff like that. So it was like a cool experience. And I went through that, worked in treatment for several years. I became pretty good at my job, confident. I learned a lot of people skills. I always was a person that worked with my hands. I never worked with computers, or like, I don't think I'd ever sent an email in my life before I started working. Right. And like, I remember,
that's so crazy.
It fucking blew my mind, because they're like, okay, you're going to manage the IOP now. Right. And I was like, okay, like, if that's what you want me to do, I'm down. And they're like, okay, we're going to give you an email address. We're going to give you this. Here's a phone. We need you to do this and that. And I looked at the lady that, was my supervisor. I was like, look, man, she said, you're going to do just fine. I'm like, all right. And like, I did, like, I figured the fuck out. And, I did it for a while, until like I lost my passion for recovery, like the newcomer, I gotta say, because of working in treatment.
Working in treatment burns you out like no other.
Yeah.
You start to like, you go to meetings and then you see like the clients or whatever, it reminds you of work. And it's like, because I've worked in recovery and I worked not in recovery. And like, when you're not working in like a treatment center setting, when you go to a meeting, it feels good to finally say, you're in recovery and to talk recovery or whatever. But when you're working in a treatment center all day, it's the last thing you want to fucking talk about.
My God. Or trying to use like recovery to keep, a client from doing something stupid. Like, you're trying to talk to him and relate with him, and it's just falling on deaf ears. And like, that happens in the meetings, but like,
it's different.
It's totally different because it, like, you feel forced almost, like.
Yeah. And like, sometimes in a meeting, like, okay, bro, like, you don't want to hear it. It's like, whatever.
Yeah. You know?
And it's like in treatment, you're like trained to like really fatigue and really do whatever you can. And then the client's not even grateful that you went above and beyond to try to get them to stay. And then fucking.
But then you get those times where you
it's
catch
rewarding.
you catch a client a year from,
You saved my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, shit like that. I did a you know, a series for some guy that, you know, this fucking kid was a dickhead, dude. He
Mhm.
fucking tried to dope fiend me into getting alcohol, like stopping at a so I ended up having to pick him up in like Palm Beach, like 2 hour or like an hour away from where I was at, picked him up, and then we had to stop for some reason. He tried to run into a gas station. I'm like, get the fuck back here. Like he's not even admitted yet.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it just continued like that his whole time. And for 30 days he was in there. I remember seeing him at a meeting. He's like, "Oh, I got 9 months clean." I'm like, "Holy shit!" And seeing him again, he's like, "Oh, I got a year clean." And then he hits
Yeah.
me up during, you know, and he's like, oh, "We got this, you know, 12-week meeting going
Mhm.
on that you're going to talk from, you know, on the
Your
first
step
step,
series.
step
That's
series,
cool.
you know." And at that time, I'd mentioned like I like kind of stopped like speaking,
Mhm.
and just because it was him, just because it was somebody that like I'd watched like from day
Mhm.
one to a year
Yeah, you
now.
can't say no to
I
him.
can't say no to this kid. You know what I mean? I can't
Yeah.
say no. And I said yes, and we did it. And it was fucking awesome. It was in September of 2020. Oh, it was
Wow.
all on Zoom. I fucking hated it,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed doing it,
Mhm.
you know? And I remember, like I said, I got burnt out working in treatment, man. And then I ended up at this one facility, man, that, you know, I guess it's popular now. This is years back where it was just kind of starting
Mhm.
with the maintenance of, you know, long-term Suboxone using
Mhm.
and Ativan and all types of other narcotics. Like
Yeah.
it just went against anything I believed in. I believe in like a 12-step program. If there
Abstinence based,
abstinence,
whatever.
exactly. You know, for months on end, this place was talking about how they didn't want to be the statistic of the treatment center that evolves to this, and that we need to make sure, you know, our
Mhm.
clients know that we're there to, you know, care for them, and we're not just going to shove poison down their throat. You know, these are their words, not mine. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? This isn't what I interpreted. This is what was said for 6 months in these staff meetings. And then one day, just out of nowhere, they're like, "Oh, this is what we're going to do." And I'm just waiting, because at the time they were saying Matt. I didn't know what the fuck Matt necessarily meant
Yeah.
at that. I'm just waiting for them to say Suboxone, or waiting them to say Subutex, or some drug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The moment they said it, I stood up. I remember the girl sitting next to me was like, you know, grabbed my arm, and I was like, "This is bullshit."
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I'm like, "I'm fucking done with this. I don't know how any of y'all can sit here." Like, I felt like the guy from Half Baked, dude. Like, fuck
Who's
you,
coming
fuck
with
yeah.
me?
Who's coming with me? And nobody came with me, and that was all right, you know. And I
Mhm.
remember standing up, and I just walked the fuck out, dude. And
Mhm.
you know, and they called me later, like, you know, "What's wrong, man?" I was like, I fucking told you what was wrong. And I think I was just done working, you know,
Mhm.
in a facility like that, or whatever the case is. I think by doing that, I fell in love with the program
Mhm.
I'm in a little more. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
I bleed that program as much as, you know what I mean? I
Mhm.
love it to death. It saved my life. It's changed my life. It's changed my family's life just by, you know, changing me, so on and so forth. And it's what I believe into my core. I have morals and values
Mhm.
today, and I'm not going to sell my morals and values for a paycheck.
For sure.
I also had the ability that I was, you know, starting this company I was talking about with my
Mhm.
brother, that I knew I had something to fall back on. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I knew, I was like, okay, I've been through brain surgeries, lost relationships, lost jobs, found other jobs, this and that. I've done this before. Like, I've been without it, and, you know, and I left that job, you know, within the next week. You know, I had 40-hour weeks, 40 hour, like,
Mhm.
it didn't stop. It actually helped the fact that I was readily available all through the week. And
Mhm.
like the company's like, you know, has been making money, making a profit finally, you know, and stuff like
Nice.
that, you know. And like, I would have never been able to do something like that.
Mhm.
Like, I was always a fearful person, you know. And I just fucking stayed. It might, you know, it might have been just the luck of the draw, whatever
Mhm.
the case is, but like, I stood up for something I believe in. And I'm like, that's one day I'm proud of. Like, I'm
Mhm.
proud of that shit
For sure.
that I did, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
From all the fucking crazy things I've done, like, I finally did something for myself, and then it ended up working out for me, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I want to appreciate you coming on the
Mm,
show, man. Love you very much, bro. You got a crazy
definitely.
story. It's crazy because like sometimes like I'll see someone for years and like not know like their story, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate you finally asking me to do this. Now the resentment has subsided.
Subsided a little bit.
A little bit. Nah, I wasn't full blown, but it was getting there. I was gonna say something.
It sounds like, do people want to be on the show? I don't know.
I'll be honest. I don't think I ever really like wanted to be on the show. I just wanted you to fucking ask me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Part of me just wanted you to ask me so I could tell you no, but then I didn't have anything going on the night. So I was like, all right.
I appreciate
So
that.
thank you, man.
Thank you, bro. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. This show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.